Okay, so get this. Have you ever heard about a book that's like a global hit now, but it totally bombed at first?
Oh, yeah. Lots of stories like that. What have you got?
We're talking about The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Millions of copies sold, tons of languages. But back when it was first published, it was a total flop.
Really?
Totally. I read this thing. It said in Brazil, where it's from, one bookseller sold a single copy the first week out. One.
Oof. Not a great start.
And then, like 6 months later, they sold another copy to the same person. Even the original publisher gave up on it.
Wow. That's almost poetic, though. Coming back for more like that
Hmm.
makes you wonder what kind of magic happened to turn that around.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, The Alchemist. I mean, what's the deal? What shifted? Why did this book that nobody seemed to want suddenly become this huge phenomenon? We've got Coelho's own words in the foreword, some of the early praise it got, that kind of strange prologue, and then, of course, pieces of Santiago's story itself.
Sounds like we got our work cut out for us, but I'm intrigued.
The big question, the mission for us today, is to figure out those core ideas, that wisdom that Booklist said is all about following one's heart, and see what it means for us, the listeners today. How does this story speak to what you're chasing, what you're curious about?
I'm game if you are. Let's get into it.
Let's go. So, right off the bat, in the foreword, Casso talks about how much he believed in this book, even when, it wasn't selling at all.
That's some serious conviction. Where do you think that came from?
I think it was really personal for him, this story. He calls it his own metaphor. It's about someone searching for this far-off treasure, only to find it was inside them all along.
I see, yeah.
And he says this really interesting thing. He's like, I was following my personal legend, and my treasure was my capacity to write, and I wanted to share this treasure with the world. It makes you think, right? What if those things we feel naturally drawn to, the stuff we're good at, what if those are our real treasure?
Hmm. Like our potential, our talents, those are the real gold. I like that.
Right. And then he goes even further and says, I am Santiago the shepherd boy in search of my treasure, just as you are Santiago the shepherd boy in search of your own. He's
Yeah.
connecting directly to us.
Totally. That line erases the distance, right? Suddenly, it's not just some story in a book. It's all of us searching for meaning, for purpose, a universal thing.
Exactly. And he also brings up this idea that keeps popping up throughout the book. The omens are the language of God. So these little signs and hints, they guide Santiago on his journey. It's almost like he's reading the universe, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of how the book connects, if we glance at the early praise in the international acclaim, you can already see these themes emerging. Publishers Weekly, they said it was a sweetly exotic tale, like something out of a dream. Then you have the Austin American Statesman comparing it to The Little Prince, suggesting it's more than just a story. And Anthony Robbins, he focused on the idea of actually claiming the life of your dreams. All different angles, but they all point to something bigger, I think.
Totally. So, right from the start, we've got these big ideas: chasing your dreams, searching for wisdom, overcoming your fears, and things happening in unexpected ways. It's like the book was already speaking to so many different people.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how Coelho starts the book with a twist on a classic story. He takes the myth of Narcissus, the guy who falls in love with his own reflection, and puts a whole new spin on it.
Hmm.
What do you make of that prologue?
Well, in the usual version, everyone feels bad for Narcissus because he's so fixated on his own beauty. But here, the lake is the one who's sad because when Narcissus looked into the water, the lake saw its own beauty reflected back.
Whoa, okay. That's deep. So it flips the whole thing. It's not about Narcissus being self-absorbed. It's about the lake finding its worth in what it reflects.
Exactly. And I think that's relevant for us too. It's not just about us looking for praise, it's about realizing that our interactions, our actions, they reflect back on us. What are we putting out into the world? What are we showing people about ourselves?
I like that. It's like a challenge to look deeper at how we affect our surroundings.
Totally. Okay, so let's meet Santiago. What's he like at the start of the story?
He's a shepherd, totally at ease with his simple life. But he's not just some mindless sheep herder. He's actually pretty thoughtful, even reads to his sheep. You can tell he's got this curiosity about the world.
Yeah, you get the sense he's got this wanderlust, right?
Hmm.
But his parents wanted him to be a priest. It's that classic clash between what you want and what's expected of you.
It is. And his dad's little speech about how traveling doesn't really change anyone, that's so telling. It's like he's resigned to this idea that people are just stuck in their ways. But Santiago, he's not buying it.
Nope. He's got this recurring dream about finding treasure at the pyramids in Egypt, and it's super vivid, super specific, and he just can't shake it.
That's got to be a sign, right?
Right? It's one of those omens poking at him. So he goes to this old woman, Tarifa, who interprets dreams,
Makes sense.
and she listens really carefully, about the treasure and the pyramids and this kid in the dream. And then she asks for a tenth of the treasure if he finds it.
Whoa, okay. She's serious about this dream.
Yeah, no kidding. It's not just some silly thing for her. She calls it a dream in the language of the world. And then her interpretation, it's so simple. She's like, go to the pyramids.
No cryptic riddles, no secret symbols, just straight up directions. That's got to be a little disappointing.
You can imagine. He probably wanted something more complicated, something profound. But then, while he's still processing all this, he runs into this old guy in the plaza who claims to be the king of Salem.
Hold on, the King of Salem.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. Santiago thinks he's just some gypsy trying to con him, which, fair. But then, get this, the old guy starts writing in the sand, and he's writing down all these things about Santiago's life, his parents' names, his time at the seminary, even the name of the merchant's daughter he has a crush on, stuff he couldn't possibly know.
Okay, that's spooky. The King of Salem or not, this guy's got some serious intel.
Right. Suddenly, this ordinary day just got super strange, and it's here that we hear about the personal legend.
What's that exactly?
Well, the old man says it's what you have always wanted to accomplish. He explains that when we're young, we all know our personal legend, the thing we're passionate about. But then he says this mysterious force makes us doubt ourselves, makes us think our dreams are impossible.
I feel that.
Right, it's like life gets in the way. And he says this incredibly powerful thing. When you really want something, it's because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. It's your mission on Earth. So our deepest desires, they're not just random, they're connected to something bigger.
Like we're meant to chase those desires.
Yeah. And then he says that famous line, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. Like the whole universe is on your side.
Whoa. So, with all this new information, Santiago has to decide. Does he stay comfortable as a shepherd, or does he chase his dream?
Big choice. And we see this example of what happens when you choose comfort over your dream with the baker, right? He always wanted to travel to Mecca, but he just never did.
Ah, the someday trap. We've all been there.
Totally. But the king of Salem, he pushes Santiago. He even makes him sell his sheep as a kind of investment in his future.
He's really committed to this personal legend stuff, huh?
For sure. And then he gives Santiago these two stones, Urim and Thummim. They're black and white, and they're supposed to help him read omens when he's not sure what to do.
Like a magic 8-ball, but for life decisions.
Sort of. But the king tells him they're just a tool. Ultimately, Santiago has to trust his own gut.
So, with his sheep sold and his magic stones in hand, Santiago heads for Tangier.
Yeah.
But things don't exactly go smoothly, do they?
Not at all. Like, immediately, this guy he thought was helping him totally robs him blind. He's left with absolutely nothing.
Oh man, talk about a reality check.
Right. He's devastated. He even thinks, I see the world in terms of what I would like to see happen, not what actually does. It's like all that hope from the King of Salem just shattered.
But even with that disappointment, he still has the stones. They're like a physical reminder of what he learned.
Yeah, maybe. So, with no money, he ends up working for this crystal merchant. And this part of the story, it's almost like a pause, a time to reflect and learn some new things.
What does he learn from the crystal merchant?
Well, the merchant, he's super resistant to change at first, but Santiago convinces him to try some new things, like displaying the crystal outside and serving tea in the glasses. And it works. Business booms. But it's interesting, the merchant has this dream, too, of going to Mecca, but he's scared to actually do it.
Scared of his own dream. Why?
He thinks that if he achieves his personal legend, his life will lose its purpose. It's like he's holding himself back. It shows that fear can show up in weird ways, even as a fear of success.
True. It's like that saying, sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
Totally. And this is where we hear about maktub.
Maktub. What's that?
It means it is written. It's this idea that some things are just destined to happen, fate. The merchant uses it to justify not going after his dream, but Santiago, even though he hears about it, he's still determined to make his own choices.
So he doesn't just accept things as they are. He believes he can change his fate.
Exactly. And get this, Santiago actually makes a bunch of money working for the merchant. He could go back home, buy more sheep, and live comfortably. But he doesn't.
Why not?
The dream of the pyramids, it's still calling him. He remembers what the old king said, and he knows he'll regret it if he doesn't go. He understands that the journey itself is important.
And that's when he meets the Englishman, right? Another guy in a quest, but a very different kind.
Yeah, the Englishman is obsessed with alchemy. He wants to find the philosopher's stone, the thing that can turn metal into gold, and the elixir of life. He's spent years reading books, looking for a real alchemist.
So he's all about knowledge, study, that kind of thing.
Totally. And Santiago, he's more intuitive, more about observing the world around him. It's like two different ways of learning.
And these differences become even more apparent when they join a caravan crossing the desert.
The desert itself is a huge lesson. The leader, he warns everyone about the dangers and how important it is to follow the rules. And the vastness, the silence, it forces Santiago to look inward.
You can practically feel the stillness of the desert in the book.
Right. And he meets this wise camel driver who tells him not to fear the unknown and says this amazing thing. Our life stories and the history of the world were written by the same hand. Like, everything is connected.
I love that image. And the caravan itself, always adjusting but heading towards the same destination, using the stars for guidance. That's such a powerful metaphor for life, right?
So good. And while all this is happening, the Englishman is still buried in his books.
Missing the point.
Totally. And it's during this time that they talk a lot about the soul of the world.
Right. What is that again?
It's like this spiritual energy that connects everything. It responds to our deepest desires, and it helps us achieve our personal legend. It's like what the King of Salem was talking about.
The universe conspiring to help us.
Yeah. And then there's the Emerald Tablet, the super important text in alchemy. It's supposed to have all the secrets, but it's only a few lines long. The Englishman thinks you need to study tons of other books to understand it, but Santiago starts to think that maybe the truth is simpler than that.
Maybe it's more about feeling it than figuring it out.
Exactly. And then finally, they reach this oasis. It's neutral territory in the middle of all this tribal warfare. And this is where things really change for Santiago.
In what way?
Well, first, he meets Fatima at the well, and it's like, boom, instant connection. He knows she's the only woman in his life, and he feels this deep sense of unity, like everything under the sun has been written by one hand only.
It's like they were destined to meet.
Totally. And what's amazing is that Fatima understands him, and she lets him continue on his journey.
She's not trying to hold him back.
Nope. She's strong, she's wise, she gets it. A true woman of the desert, as they say in the book.
And at the oasis, Santiago finally meets the alchemist.
The actual alchemist.
Yeah, the Englishman actually meets him first, but it's a super brief, almost dismissive encounter. But Santiago, he has this vision of an attack on the oasis, and when he warns the tribal leaders, they listen. And that's what leads him to the alchemist.
So trusting his gut saved the oasis and brought him to his destiny.
Exactly. And the first thing the alchemist asks is, or is it your personal legend that brings you here? Like, he sees right through Santiago.
He knows what's up. And then, just to prove how powerful he is, the alchemist does this crazy thing with a cobra.
A cobra?
Yeah. He draws a circle in the sand and controls this poisonous snake with his mind. It's a display of his mastery over nature.
That's intense.
Right. And then he tells Santiago more about love and personal legends, how true love doesn't stop you from chasing your dreams. It actually supports you.
That's a good reminder.
So Santiago decides to keep going with the alchemist, and their journey becomes all about listening to your heart.
Your heart?
Yeah. The alchemist says our hearts are connected to the soul of the world, and they know the truth. There's this scene where Santiago actually talks to his heart, and it's scared.
Scared of what?
Of losing what it's gained, of the journey itself. And the alchemist tells him, tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. It's not about avoiding the hard stuff. It's about facing it.
That's some tough love right there.
It is. And the alchemist keeps reminding Santiago that every step towards his personal legend brings him closer to understanding the divine, closer to finding his treasure. And he says this sad thing, how most people's hearts go silent because they stop listening to their dreams.
That's kind of heartbreaking.
I know, right? So then they run into these Arab tribesmen who want to know what they're carrying. And the alchemist, he just straight up says they have the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life.
Is he serious?
It sounds crazy, but it works. The tribesmen laugh and let them go. And the alchemist says, when you possess great treasures within you and try to tell others of them, seldom are you believed. It's like some truths are so big, people can't even grasp them.
Say fake it till you make it.
Haha, not exactly. More like sometimes you just have to trust that what you know is real, even if others don't
That's
get it.
art.
And then they get to this point where the alchemist gives Santiago the ultimate test. He tells him to turn himself into the wind.
Turn into the wind. How is that even possible?
Santiago doesn't know either. He talks to the desert, the wind, the sun, trying to figure it out. And each element, it shows him something about love and connection, but none of them can do what he's asking.
So what does he do?
He prays, he surrenders to something bigger than himself, and in that moment of complete faith, he somehow does it. He becomes the wind. It's all about letting go and trusting the universe.
Wow. And after all that, the alchemist is ready to leave. But he doesn't go empty-handed.
Nope. He gives Santiago some gold, and he even gives some to a monk with a specific amount set aside for Santiago based on this proverb about things happening 3 times. It's like he's ensuring Santiago's future success.
That's some serious foresight.
Right? And then he tells this story about a Roman man and his 2 sons. It's about how everyone, even seemingly ordinary people, play a part in the grand scheme of things, even if they don't realize it.
I like that. It's like everyone's story matters.
And finally, the alchemist says his most famous line, "Where your treasure is, there also will be your heart." It's about finding your true purpose, where your passion lies.
Beautiful.
So Santiago's on his own again, following his heart. And his heart, it tells him, be aware of the place where you are brought to tears. That's where I am, and that's where your treasure is.
That's so poetic.
It is.
Yeah.
He finally reaches the pyramids, but guess what? Bandits attack him and take everything. It's like the worst possible luck.
Oh no, so close.
I know. But here's the thing. He tells the bandits about his dream, about the treasure at the pyramids, and the leader of the bandits, he says he had a dream too, about treasure buried in a ruined church in Spain under a sycamore tree.
Wait, the church where Santiago started?
Yep. It's like the whole journey was leading him back home.
Full circle.
Totally. So he goes back to that abandoned church, finds the sycamore tree, and digs up a chest full of gold and jewels.
His treasure was right there all along.
He even puts Urim and Thummim in the chest as a reminder of everything he's learned. And the story ends with him realizing that life really is generous to those who pursue their personal legend. And he's thinking about Fatima. I can't wait to see her again.
It's a perfect ending.
So what do we take away from all this? I mean, the big thing is following your dreams, your personal legend, even when it's hard.
Right. Don't let fear stop you.
And pay attention to the omens, those little signs that guide us. Remember the soul of the world, that everything is connected, that the universe is on our side.
And don't forget about love. True love supports your dreams. It doesn't hold you back.
And the biggest thing maybe is that our true treasure, it might not be what we expect. It might be closer than we think, connected to our passions, our purpose.
So for you listening, think about your own personal legend. What are you dreaming of? What signs are you seeing? What treasures are you searching for?
Here's a final thought. Maybe the alchemist flopping at first was that an omen itself. Maybe it had to go through that struggle to become what it is today.
Interesting.
So what about your life? What setbacks, what failures have you experienced that might actually be leading you to something amazing?
Something to think about, for sure. If you want to explore these ideas further, pick up a copy of The Alchemist. It's full of wisdom and might just change your perspective on your own journey.
And that's our deep dive for today. Until next time.
Take care.